Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Game Changer. I am Maryam Zia. In today's program, we will be exploring Pakistan's potential when we talk about economic opportunities. Pakistan's strategic location is, of course, of paramount importance. Pakistan stands at the crossroad of South Asia, Central Asia, and West Asia. And of course, it opens unprecedented opportunities for Pakistan. In today's program, we will be talking about regional connectivity and specifically economic corridors. And when we talk about economic corridors, how China-Pakistan economic corridor and in the larger scheme of things, BRI holds potential for unprecedented opportunities for Pakistan. When we talk about these economic corridors and regional connectivity, of course, there are issues as well regarding regional instability as well. What needs to be done to address these, of course, issues we will be exploring in today's program. Tonight, we will be exploring these opportunities as well as challenges in regards to making Pakistan a market of tomorrow and how CPAC is going to be a game changer for Pakistan. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Dr.Usman Chohan, who is economist. Welcome to the program. We're also joined by Mr. Qaisar Nawab, who is President Belt and Road Initiative for Sustainable Development. Welcome to the program. Dr. Chohan, let me start with you. Of course, when we talk about Pakistan's strategic location at the crossroads of South Asia, Central Asia, and West Asia, this opens a lot of opportunities for Pakistan. In your opinion, how can Pakistan leverage this strategic location specifically in regards to connecting to member states, specifically when we talk about CARIC member states as well?
I think it is an excellent question, and thank you for this. There are only a handful of places in the world that have the sort of strategic economic connectivity that we do. I can only think of a handful. There's Panama, there's Egypt, Turkey, Malaysia, and Pakistan, essentially. And that is why you often find with such strategically, economically important places that they have a blessing and a curse because of this. For 5,000 years, we have been victims of invasions from all directions. That is the curse. But at the same time, you have such a big blessing in terms of this being one of the most prosperous, if not the most prosperous place over the past 5,000 years. And that has to do with the movement of people and goods and ideas here. The economic center of gravity of the world in 1080 was Pakistan. And in 180, it was Pakistan. And that means that we've had this prosperity due to a hybridity of cultures and peoples and ideas that makes us truly enriching in the world. Now, our job is to make the balance be more towards the blessing rather than the curse. And above all, it requires a strategic vision, which has been articulated already. And now it is a matter of executing that vision piece by piece.
And when we talk about executing this vision, Mr. Qaisar, in your opinion, what kind of structural reforms are needed in Pakistan if we talk about it in the context of economic corridors?
Thank you very much for having me in this program. It's indeed a very important topic and very timely as well, because today is the first day of the new government, the new Prime Minister, and I hope that these will be as a part of the upcoming future discourse of the National Assembly and the policy makers. And this is a very important question, because this is the time which we need to do the structural reforms, not only on the mega or the government level, but indeed on the societal level as well. Dr. Chohan, a fellow colleague, very nicely explained what and how we have been blessed by this, even located as strategically. He mentioned about Panama and the Suez Canal in Egypt, and I think it's important that Pakistan is a very strategically important located in this map of the world. But at the same time, we do have more important strengths as well, particularly in regarding of the manpower, which we have the youngest nation in the world. I mean, we are 70% of the young population, and I think there is a need to be more focus on these structural reforms which are linked with the human beings, in particular with the young people, because these young people is one of the strength of Pakistan that is needed to all the economic corridors, including the Belt and Road Initiative. Pakistan is the fourth largest in the world, being a young population. And this young population need to be guided, need to be skilled, and need to be a part of this strategic vision. And this should be on the top priority of the vision as well. So I think this is important to be mentioned, that this whole coming years and even today, that should be focused on the young people, and that should be focused on the human development of the Pakistan, which should be included into the strategic vision as well as into the strategic
Right,
location.
right.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Chohan, very important points, of course, highlighted by Mr. Qaisar. And in your opinion, when we talk about, of course, this young population, how do you see the role of orange economy in Pakistan, and what kind of measures are needed to invest in human resource development?
Fantastic question. I agree with my colleague Qaisar Saab that we have a true possibility of something remarkable because we have such a large young population. When you travel around the world, you remark upon how quickly societies are aging, and so the dividends that they might have reaped are no longer possible. There's simply just not enough people, and robots and algorithms are not going to solve that for you. We have this unique dividend, but it is also, just like strategic location, a blessing and a curse, because if you have too many rowdy kids, you're in a big mess. So as Qaisar Saab said, you have to guide them and nurture them. But I'll tell you one wonderful thing that is happening in Pakistan, which is that the youth, because they may not have the institutional support in all directions, they have begun to nurture themselves. And you see this in many manifestations, for example, in their freelancing initiatives, in how they teach themselves to program, in how they are creating opportunities for themselves in the new economy, the digital economy. And so even without guides per se, because your elder generation is not even aware of these technologies, they don't even know how to handle it, the youth has become its own guide. And for Pakistan, it is the best possible situation where if they cannot find a mentor, they find the mentor within. And you see very positive examples on social media, on YouTube, on other avenues in programming, in freelancing opportunities, where they will simply create their own economy. And I think that's the most positive thing they can do.
Right, of course, that is the most positive thing. But at the same time, Dr. Chohan, when we talk about the significance of Pakistan's economic potential, clustering of industries is very important. In your opinion, of course, today is the first day of new Prime Minister in office, and the first challenge would be, of course, economic instability within the country. So what kind of industries do you think we should be focusing on? And of course, the clustering of these industries in strategic areas remains an important issue. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. The clusters, there's two ways to deal with clusters. One is to engineer them inorganically, and the other is organic clusters. An inorganic cluster would be one that is in a remote place, and that's hard to do. You need to have policy initiatives, energy initiatives, you have to relocate people, and that's hard work. But we have a remarkable set of organic clusters. You have a cluster from Peshawar to Multan of 100 million plus people. That is a remarkable cluster that you have, where there's a congregation of ideas and industries. And yes, I agree with you that the government has to set economy as its first priority, but you will see that many forces are now going to converge in Pakistan's favor, and connectivity is one of them. I do understand that it's a tough world out there, inflation, geopolitical conflicts, competition among world powers, but Pakistan is actually very well situated to profit from this as long as we think in an agile manner, and if we shed the burdens of the past to imagine the world anew, and that is possible because we are a young country.
Of course, and Mr. Qaisar, when we talk about clustering of these industries in strategic areas, when we talk about economic corridor, specifically CPAC, and the larger network of BRI as well, how can we ensure that these industries not only bring dividends for Pakistan, but of course they have larger networks beyond Pakistan and are part of a global supply chain?
I think Dr. Chohan already explained very well and very nicely that we have this bulge of population, and the bulge of population again coming to the youth because they are more, but there is a need to transform these cultures as well, which is, for example, you need to promote the cultures of industrialization, the culture of business. There is very few people who are supporting businesses. For example, many things that just come into our culture is that go up and ended it with Jazakallah, thank you very much, God bless you. No, it should be transformed into a business model, because this is the reason that why that we cannot excel into the modern businesses, the emerging businesses, the IT, the tech, and there are so many communication services. We
And what kind of measures are needed for that purpose?
This needs to be started from the grassroots level. We need to teach. I mean, we need to teach. We need to change the education course. This is very timely and very importantly that we need to review the course, and we need to come up with the modern courses, and people are no more interested, even the young people are no more interested in getting the degrees, because the degrees are useless when it comes to the job market. People are more into the freelancing, people are more into the IT, the digital, and to the cybersecurity and the smaller courses, because you do a specialized 1-year course that gave you $2,000 or $1,000, that's converted into like 3 lakh rupees almost, is more than what maybe a doctor or myself are getting even doing a PhD for 20-25 years.
Right, right. So that is one opinion. I might not agree with that, because for intellectual, of course, advancement, degrees remains an important, and learning remains an important tool. But at the same time, when we talk about economic corridors and significance of economic corridors, and of course, we are hopeful that the new government is going to be working on advancing the current development and current work on economic corridors. In your opinion, how important is urban development and urban, of course, planning in that regard?
You've touched upon a very important topic. When we think of connectivity and we think of economic activity, we often talk in terms of nation states. But in fact, the cities are the true lens to examine economics. Our cities are so large that they exceed other countries in size. Our largest city is more than 20 million people. Our second largest is about 15 million. The third largest is about 8 million people. These are larger than countries that I've been to. And the fact is that they themselves are economic centers. Now, your specific question is about how to plan them out. I think this is the most important thing to make a functional society. And you know what? It isn't actually very hard to do. What it requires is clean local government. Clean local government means that they are dedicated to public service within the budgets that they have. That means that they prioritize the key facilities that are required. For example, infrastructure, and there's a lot of good work being done on infrastructure in Pakistan over the last 10 years. But it also requires education facilities, healthcare facilities, public security, and all of these working in unison so that the people create their own initiatives within a safe space. That is what the city must be. And see, we already have the critical mass for many large cities. All you need is about, let's say, 80,000 people. How many settlements in Pakistan exceed that? It's over 100 places where you can have businesses run in a functional manner with a larger corridor and connectivity concept in mind.
So, Dr. Chohan, does private sector also plays a role in this, and how can we establish that public-private partnership in that regard, because keeping in mind the government's resources at hand at this point in time, of course, this is going to be an issue when we talk about making our cities as hubs of innovation and making, of course, labor that, giving labor that capacity building training as well. So do you think that private sector can play its role, and what kind of incentives should be given to private sector for that purpose?
Fantastic point. Fantastic point that the private sector has to be the leader, in fact, in this. The private sector has the capital, it has the motivation, it has the profit motive to do this. The public-private partnership model sometimes is exaggerated because it assumes that public and private think along the same lines, but that is not true. And they have different logics and they have different goals. I think that the biggest favor that the public sector can do for the private sector is just get out of the way. Now, this is a right-wing idea, and I feel ashamed to label it in that way because I'm not necessarily right-wing, but right-wing people say that government needs to get out of the way, and in fact, this is the truth in Pakistan, that you have to have all this NOC culture, which is actually a colonial legacy, get out of the way. Our structures of government in South Asia in general are basically meant to replicate what was done by the British. And the British didn't want the people of Hindustan to actually have businesses. They didn't want them to thrive. So they made them go through all these bells and whistles and hoops to not get what they wanted. And because all the decisions had to be made from London, and that the locals here would not have any say in it. That was the whole point. Now we have to erode that legacy and have private sector take the lead. This NOC culture has to stop, and professional oversight with the technocratic merit has to be the public sector's role. Public value is the core, and it is important, but private sector will actually drive that value creation going forward as long as they are not over-regulated. So there is a balance.
Right. But at the same time, some kinds of incentives are required at this point in time for bringing capital back to the country, because a lot of investors at this point in time have taken their investments out of the country, especially in Middle East. So what kind of measures should be needed so that they come back and invest in special economic zones and other economic, of course, corridors?
Very good point. Very good point that you can frame it in terms of 3 tiers of investors. The bottom tier, and I don't mean this in terms of prestige or anything, I just mean in terms of the core base, is the domestic investor who has his capital in rupee and is based here. This is large, but it is often dead capital, which is that it is put into agriculture or real estate, so it is not liquid per se. And our banking system is catering largely to government borrowing, so it does not extend capital, like credit, to the people or to small businesses. That is also a big loss for the private sector. Then there's the second tier, which is the overseas Pakistanis. So they have dollars and they have euros, but for them to come back here, they need to have a trust in the system. It is tragic sometimes that people come with their life savings to Pakistan and then locals swindle them left, right and center, and they're heartbroken because their attachment to Pakistan grew living abroad and realizing what Pakistan is, what it is and why it is. So they came back with love, and that love was unrequited. So we have to requite that love, that these overseas Pakistanis come here, they are given their return and they're given a sense of belonging and stake and a voice. They don't vote, for example. That is one thing I think is a big deficit. And then finally is the large multinationals or G2G government investment, and I think we target that a little too much. We have this high ambition that if big entities come, it means that the system is good. But the truth is that if you have domestic investors and overseas Pakistanis investing, I think is much more positive because they have a true stake in Pakistan's success, whereas multinationals look at Pakistan as one entity within a larger portfolio, and they don't really care between Bangladesh and Vietnam and Sri Lanka. They're all the same to them. So that is the least loyal of investors. But the domestic investor and the overseas Pakistanis are the most loyal. Cultivating their capital and giving them a stake is more important.
Of course, and giving them stake is important, and we have to create a conducive environment for that purpose. But at the same time, Mr. Qaisar, when we talk about infrastructure, there are of course a lot of issues in that regard as well that need to be addressed. What kind of interventions, in your opinion, are required in infrastructure development, specifically when we talk about it in the context of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor or the larger BRI?
Just to adding to the one part of the answer is that we need to focus on the Pakistani diaspora to bring the investment, to bring the new capital back to Pakistan, and it should be a core part of the Pakistan foreign policy. That should be based on diaspora, because it's the Pakistan biggest strength, which it holds a very good capacity and strength to come back and to empower Pakistan, and that's are mostly located in the very good developed countries already. While coming to the urban planning, I think we have noticed this, that during the COVID, we faced that huge problem while we were stuck in the boxes. Our rooms or homes are not so sustainably or so friendly to the human being, that we had faced so many other issues like mental illness and so many other problems, and we can see these whenever just natural disasters come, and we have seen the bigger cities that holds more than a population of a country, as my colleague said. But when it comes to the basic facilities, we need to do this more in a very doable way. While coming back to your question, I think it's important. We need to do something on a larger scale with innovative and the modern and sustainable architecture that should be environmental friendly. There should be focus on the climate change, which is also one of the severe issue of Pakistan as well, and that should be aligned with the mega constructions and whatever progress is happening under the Belt and Road, CPEC or any other projects.
Right, and when we talk about Belt and Road Initiative as well as CPEC, of course a lot has been done in regards to railways, in regards to roads and of course building bridges and highways, but railway connectivity as well as of course air connectivity has been neglected in the past. So how do you think the focus should be shifted to these areas? Because around the world we see that railway systems are very much established, but unfortunately in Pakistan the focus has not been much on this.
I think you very rightly mentioned about this connectivity via air and while connectivity via rail. While moving towards the developed countries, people are no more traveling or prefer to travel via air. They are more preferred towards greener travels, which is to the electric train and this high-speed train. Once I was in China and I've seen that we reached to like 2,000 kilometers in just few hours. And that was more sustainable, more friendly, and so many people in one place. And I think Pakistan need to do this ML1 projects to speed up under the Belt and Road initiative, the part of the CPEC as well. And there is a significant number of new airlines which added in just the recent years. For example, Fly Jinnah, for example, this the Sailcoat Airways, and so many other. For example, we also had a very good connectivity now with the Central Asia. A recent connecting flights, direct flight from Islamabad to Baku from 3 main cities, which is in Azerbaijan. I mean, we have now the same in Astana from Kazakhstan. We have a charter flight to Kyrgyzstan. So we are connected to the Karrak as well, and we are already trying to connect towards the other part of the world as well. But unfortunately, I think there are at some policy level, there is a need to more empower and more encourage the private companies that come and that can help us as well in increasing this connectivity.
Right. And Dr. Chohan, when we talk about, of course, inviting these partners, how significant, in your opinion, is the role of development partners for providing technical assistance as well as financial support to Pakistan regarding building these infrastructures and, of course, railway networks and air connectivity as well?
Oh, it's very important. I think you're right. I would like to see a mix, actually. I don't want to outsource all of the development to outsiders, because there is actually a lot of know-how here and expertise. And when you pair that up with foreign expertise towards common goals, you get the best outcomes, because we don't know everything, but we do know enough. And so win-win situations are the most important thing for connectivity, which is to say that you do bring in experts and you pair them up with local expertise to get what you want. And we also have to think hard about what we want. Many projects have been constructed over the last 10 years, and one has to do a review. One has to do a review of what value they have contributed, how much they do, and you will find that some have contributed tremendous amounts of value, and their importance has not been highlighted. And at the same time, there are others that you think it doesn't really make sense why this was done to start with. And this should inform future development projects. So we have to learn from what we do, rather than do things in a haphazard manner. Not saying that we do, but no country should ever do things in a haphazard manner, but have continuity across governments, across generations, so that you are tailored towards a final goal of prosperity.
Right, but when we look at development partners, can you tell us about what kind of development partners Pakistan can engage with? Like, of course, there are projects in which Pakistan is engaged with Qarric countries as well. ADB is one of the partners. How can we enhance this? And also there are, of course, many impending disputes within the region that are going to be posing challenges in regards to connectivity. We look at Afghanistan and other neighbors as well. So do you think that we can, of course, address those issues as well in regards to regional connectivity?
Oh, it's a profound question, you know. It's a profound question because there are two competing logics. There's the security logic and then there's the economic logic. This is a problem not just for Pakistan but for any important country, that two opposing logics create friction. In the United States, for example, there's Wall Street, which is the economic logic, which is totally non-ideological. It is just a free market mindset, but it doesn't have any security considerations. And at the same time, so that's New York. But then there's Washington, which is totally a security establishment of Washington. And they now have frictions. So New York used to say, invest in China, invest in everywhere, doesn't matter. Now the security establishment of the United States has said no, China is not supposed to be invested in, and it has overruled. Now every country faces this. So my recommendation when we face a similar dilemma is that if you want a truly economic worldview, you should be open to all partners, and then you would not have a hierarchy of I prefer this or that. You have to be open to business from everywhere. That is how our ancestors were, and that is why we prospered. Now, if you want to have the opposing logic, then you should not expect to have prosperity. Then you have a different priority, and that's fine. But I think that if you ask the people of Pakistan, particularly the young people, because of social media and everything, they have a get-rich-quick mentality, which means that they want to see the results in this generation. And if that is what you are targeting, then economic logic must triumph. And that means that you have to be open to communication and interaction and engagement and exchange from all parts of the world without prejudice.
Right. Can you provide us some of the examples that Pakistan can replicate with its neighboring countries regarding addressing these, of course, impending disputes within the region and addressing regional connectivity issues, because that remains an issue that is keeping South Asian region poorer than the rest of the world, although it holds immense potential.
It's a very good point. I don't think that there's any other model that is replicable, because every region is unique and they have to go through their processes over generations to realize things, and then they make decisions for themselves or against their interests. You cannot, for example, superimpose the example of the EU, because they went through World War II and the whole place went to hell in a handbasket. From that torment, they realized we have to get over it. Similarly, ASEAN countries had a very different experience to South Asia, so we cannot replicate that. Perhaps there are some contemporary examples of the African Union, where 56 countries will now join. That is, but they also are joining after 200 years or 300 years of subjugation. Similarly, Mercosur has a pink tide issue where they have left and right governments, and they are, even if they have made a huge amount of progress in South America, there are new regimes coming in that are totally antithetical to local considerations. So I don't believe that any other foreign concept will translate well. What we need to do is that the decision makers of all of the countries of our region, broadly defined, so it's Central Asia, West Asia, and South Asia, come and realize that we have to be of one mind for mutual prosperity, because this is the most significant crossroads area when you go that large as a region, and try to set aside our differences with dignity and with understanding for each other's position. And there are many people who want to throw a wrench in that. You have Hindu nationalism coming in the way, you have populism coming in the way, you have old school autocratic tendencies across the region too, and this all wants to impede, for a narrow interest, a broader prosperity. Now that's why China's view of bringing everybody on the same page is a good ambition, and they are the ones who have also the clout and the vision to implement that. So they are the counter narrative in that sense.
Right, of course, and China, talking about China's counter narrative, of course, CPEC remains important, and I want to ask about, of course, special economic zones, and in your opinion, what potential do they hold, and what kind of industries should be, of course, capitalized on, or there is potential for us to maximize on in special economic zones of Pakistan?
Special economic zone is a very integral part of this China-Pakistan economic corridor. I think there is a need to promote further special economic zones among the business community, not only inside Pakistan but of course outside as well. So the most important thing is that we need to connect this special economic zone through the World Chamber of Commerce, so we can attract the business community what they have to be inside the special economic zone. And as my colleague shared about the China's vision of shared future, it's the only thing that come up with the win-win cooperation, and it's the only unique model in the world that actually give an opportunity to everybody, to both partner, to multilateral, to bilateral, to come up with the win-win with the shared future of the human mankind. So I think there is a huge number of potential opportunities, particularly in Pakistan, if we try to promote the indigenous business people. I mean, the people who are currently stable in Pakistan and they are still want and explore to invest in Pakistan is into the AI, the IT, and the digital world. I mean, these are the spheres where Pakistani minds are working very well. The young.
And what about export-oriented industries in Pakistan? What kind of investments are needed in that regard, so that of course we can enhance our export-oriented industries and boost Pakistan's trade potential and reach out to the international markets and reach out and of course make our standards that are in line with international standards?
So coming towards that, I mean, the most important and the most easy part which we can currently and we can do in a very short time, like of 6 months or 3 months or 1 year, is the human resource export, which doesn't need much energy, infrastructure and so many things. It needs a proper direction of the the existing institutes, universities and colleges, the skill developed colleges and so many other things, and we do have all these organizations and government departments. There are mega funds for that, but the only thing is to channelize them in the right way to promote these things. For example, you come up with this chip designing. It's one of the needed human resource in the world, and these are needed in the developed countries. So this one person, if you train them, these young people, they can return back and to the country, they can send money back to the country, which is one of the easiest in this current crisis, and we can do that very easily. And the young people also need that. This is even the liability on the country as well. At the same time, it's a blessing, but at the same time, it's a big problem for Pakistan as well. So we need to change this youth bulge into a very nice and a very good human resource.
Of course, there's a lot of potential when we talk about Pakistan's youth bulge. We will be talking more about it and, of course, its significance in regards to Pakistan's economic corridors, but after a short break. Welcome back. We are talking about how economic corridors can boost Pakistan's potential of becoming a regional economic hub. And of course, we were in a discussion with Dr. Chohan and Mr. Qaisar Nawab. Dr. Chohan, when we talk about different policies, in your opinion, what kind of policies at this point in time are needed by the incumbent government to implement regarding attracting foreign direct investments? We know, of course, SIFC is going to be playing a major role in this regard as well.
Absolutely. So the structure as it is in place has two parallel paths. You have your traditional ministries and other sorts of institutions in the bureaucratic system, and then you have SIFC. So there is a lot of overlap. I would like in Pakistan for it to be streamlined, be a one-window operation with the ease of doing business in mind. So ease of doing business has several categories, about 16 categories that really matter. And if you have a policy that addresses each of them, you're already more than halfway there, because the policy set with the ease of doing business in mind will then give the signal to foreign investors that you are in line with international best practices. And when you do have policies like that, you have to make sure it goes down to the very bottom and the grassroots, and it's cohesive from the bottom to the top. So it is internally consistent and it is externally consistent. That is the requirement. And for this, I think a strong point for policy making in this regard is to take all stakeholders on board. If you do it in an ivory tower, then you will not see the ground level impacts of it. Therefore, you have to get as many inputs as possible while formulating it and keep the rubric of the ease of doing business in mind for each.
Right. Dr. Chohan, you alluded to 16 important points in that regard. Can you highlight some of the significant, like 4 or 5 important points, and also what are some of the best international practices in that regard regarding ease of doing businesses? And don't you think that SIFC is going to be addressing those issues when we talk about creating a single window operation?
Absolutely, but you would still have all these ministries that exist which may be going on their own internal logic. So everybody needs to be on the same page is my point. However you structure it is up to you, as long as it gets the job done. And that is, of course, Deng Xiaoping's mindset too. It doesn't matter if it's a white cat or a black cat, as long as it catches mice. I think that prudence is very instructive for us, because we're at a similar stage to China was circa 1978. So it's important for us to follow that. Now, you asked about the rubric of the ease of doing business. One is about energy, energy stability and a low cost of energy provision, and therefore we need a cohesive energy policy, which in our case would also address the circular debt, as well as who owns the power companies, how they're paid, and what sorts of tariff rates go with that. Keeping in mind the IMF's imposition as well. The energy is one. The other one is about the settlement of contracts. So having standardized settled contracts that are enforceable, and then having a judicial performance to make sure that it is considered a neutral ground even for foreign investors, that they don't take you to arbitration abroad. That is another important one. The third is about the NOC culture, getting all of the NOCs out of the way and really simplifying it so that anybody can start a business tomorrow is another strong, important thing. Just get rid of this NOC stuff, standardize it, and make sure you're working more on the oversight rather than on the regulation per se. The fourth one that you can think of is about the tax collection and the tax things. So we have many slabs, and there are best practices, let's say, from the OECD for this. There's 6 important traits, and I'll just summarize some of them for you. It has to be a simple system, it has to be an efficient system, it has to be a neutral system, it has to be a fair system. Let's just take those 4. And if you can make your tax system like that, you're already more than halfway there for the ease of doing business requirements. Now, you also asked who are the best examples of this. Well, these are countries that have totally taken on, as I was saying to you, 2 capitals. They've taken a total economic logic to dominate. For example, in the UAE or in Singapore, they really keep the ease of doing, or New Zealand, they keep the ease of doing business as a primary function. So it's so easy for anybody to start a business tomorrow there. And that is a very nice template for us. But we are much larger, we are more diverse, we're more complex. So it won't be that we can replicate those models instantaneously. But that's a good guiding light for us to achieve in terms of what we're aiming for, I think.
Right. So, Dr. Chohan, when we talk about, of course, single window operation, that remains significant, but what kind of challenges and opportunities Pakistan faces in terms of aligning Pakistan's economic policies with those of neighboring countries for regional connectivity?
Well, because these the diversity of cultures in our region is so immense, their traditions and their laws are so different, it is sometimes difficult to find a common ground in principle, but that requires flexibility on the part of us and our counterparties, and it's not so difficult. But for example, we have good relations with countries that are very different in terms of their norms and values and laws. That doesn't mean that business cannot be done. After all, the more open we are to engaging with other people, and the better our systems are designed, the more people will overcome their own biases or barriers to come. And that's why you don't have to change yourself necessarily, but you do have to keep a flexible mindset, and so does everybody else.
Do you think there is a potential for, of course, at some point, that Pakistan's own economic policies can be aligned with that of neighboring countries within the region?
Absolutely, and the way I would say that is the ease of doing business is now pretty much a universal rubric. So investors that are truly multinational in this world do speak a common psychological language, and the psychological language does have a manifestation in the ease of doing business, which is a World Bank publication anyways. You don't have to be a fan of the World Bank to see that they have created this common language that international investors can deal in. So if we check the boxes on that, we are suggesting that we have come on board with the international best practices. And that's not easy per se to do at the ground level, but at least if you set the direction at the top level well, then it should trickle down all the way and be manifest as one coherent mechanism.
Of course, that is very important. Lastly, Mr. Qaisar, when we talk about, of course, these policies, they remain significant, but of course there are going to be challenges as well. In your opinion, what kind of mitigation strategies can Pakistan foresee or implement for, of course, comprehensive economic stability within the country?
I think the changing of policies is one of the prime issue for the international investors, even the local as well. So you don't know when the policy is going to change. We never persistent toward the current policies. We need to stick to the policies, and we need to implement the policies as well. So implementation is also a big problem in our country, which need an urgent attention of the stakeholders. And another thing is what I believe is that I visited last year to Botswana, one of the country which is the world largest producing diamond. And it's called the Diamond City as well. And I met with the First Lady while during the meeting she mentioned that our next slogan for our election, which is also in this year, is, and it's in process, in the campaign, is to the change of mindset. We need to, and I was thinking on that what this exactly means, change of mindset of the nation. We need to change actually the mindset of the policy makers, of the nation in a wider spectrum, which is actually one of the way that should, provide an environment for all those existing policies that can be easily implemented, and for all those upcoming reforms or policies which is needed to boost the economic stability or even other stabilities as well. Economic stability is not only linked in Pakistan with industrialization. We have other major issues, for example, law and order. for example, ownership of this country. You have seen a lot of people in a common positions, in a lower, they don't own their own offices when they come to the government or when it comes to Sarkari. So it's need to be changed in a wider spectrum in the society. And again, this goes towards the classroom. This goes towards the parental education. This goes towards mosque, madrasa, and hujra, and all these cultures.
Right. From the very basic level.
From the very basic level. And of course, for the larger, I mean, we do have an expert like my colleague and so many other guys. They are working very nicely. But when it comes to the grassroots level, there is a huge bulk of population. And we have not those issues which can be easily catch up with them, because we have a very huge population. These other examples we are trying to are very fancy, but their blessing is that they have a small population and they can be easily managed. The policies can be easily implemented. But when it comes to the Pakistan, we need to focus on this. And I think as a part of the society, as a civil society worker, or in a way that we can contribute to the young people, is that we need to own the country first. When we have this sense of ownership, the country should own us as well, as young people. The people who are currently in the policymaker tables, they need to acknowledge and they need to sit with the young people to make and formulate the policies for today, not for tomorrow.
Actually make them stakeholders, of course.
For today, not for tomorrow. Tomorrow is already for us, and we have to do is for the upcoming generation. I think this needs a mindset change, the acceptability of the young people and the young businesses in the modern text. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Qaisar Nawab, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Dr. Usman Chohan, for joining us in today's program. Of course, when we talk about Pakistan's potential for economic stability, of course, there are a lot of challenges, but the potential at the same time is huge. Pakistan must develop a coherent economic policy that is, of course, going to be implementable with long-term goals and stability. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.